our next speaker, Miss Shyanne Valentine. Cheyenne, welcome.
Oh, hello, hello.
Yes, Cheyenne. I'm gonna actually have you unflip, I guess, or your video.
So I have it on front camera, but it
Hmm.
seems to be like it's not moving. So should I click on
There it
moving?
is. I think whatever you just did,
Go
do it
back to
again.
it.
There it is.
Hmm.
And Nancy, if you will tell me if we are okay. And yeah, so we're having a hard time seeing you. However, do you have some lights maybe that you can turn on?
Yes.
I want to make sure that people see your beautiful face. I was going through your bio earlier and looking all over. You're all over the internet with the work that you do. So I want to spend some time introducing the guests today to you. Uh oh. Miss Cheyenne got disconnected, but I will still introduce her while she's reconnecting. Cheyenne is a wellness advocate and instructional designer with a background in project management, education, and social work. She designs educational materials for companies looking to enhance their employee and customer learning experiences. So I'm really interested to know how Cheyenne does this work, because to be able to bring wellness to corporate environments is a bit tricky, I'm guessing. Cheyenne, are you okay now?
Yes.
Yeah.
For some reason, my video is not showing. I'm clicking on the show video, but it's
Hmm. You are frozen right now, but I'm wondering if you have the presentation. What you can do is proceed with the presentation. Did you have a presentation already?
yes. Yep.
Okay.
It's been shared. Perfect.
So we hear you just fine. So it's technology, you know how it does. But what I want to do is give you 15 minutes to just go over that presentation. Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. So sorry everyone for the video, but hopefully, my voice will resonate through and and give you guys all the things that you need and are looking for today. Thank you for that awesome introduction. I wanted to go in and first say to Tasha that was a really awesome, presentation. And there are so many things that I'm actually going to piggyback off of when it comes to this. And so I want to start off with a question. And this is also the title of my presentation. What are you getting ready for? And the focus of this is how to strike a balance between present and preparing for the future. And so as I go through this, we're going to talk about what is really going on with our people and why is it that we are so focused on constantly getting ready for the next thing, so much so that we are missing what is going on in front of our eyes. Next slide. So I want to talk to you all about a Chinese proverb that I read, and it really struck something inside of me, and it made me want to start researching this idea and this concept that we are always preparing for the next thing in our lives. So people in the West are always getting ready to live. When I read this, I was like, man, that is so interesting. We are constantly getting ready for the next thing in our lives. When we're young, we can't wait to get big. Once we're big, we can't wait to get out of the house. Then we can't wait to get a job. And then we can't wait until vacation. And then we can't wait until retirement and so on and so forth. And we are finding ourselves in this place of constantly looking for the next thing and constantly reaching over or looking over the fence, as I say. Next slide. And that leads me to this. Are you looking over the fence? And so when we're constantly looking for the next thing and we're constantly trying to prepare for tomorrow, we're also finding ourselves looking over into someone else's yard essentially, or looking into someone else's or looking into a future that had preparing for a future without actually realizing what's happening in our own yard, right? And I was talking to a few people about this and how we can get so caught up in looking over the fence and looking at the next thing that we don't even see what's really in front of us, right? And so what does that mean? When we're looking at what we need to prepare for tomorrow, we miss what's going on today in our lives. Whether you're a parent, whether you are a spouse, whether you're a friend, whether you are all of those things, even if you're a change agent, right? If we're going out and we're trying to change the world, how is it that we're going to be able to do that if we're not present enough to see what's actually happening in front of us, right? So one thing that I would like to focus our attention on is how to actually identify if we're not really being present in our lives. Next slide. Sorry, guys, I'm pulling up my notes here. Okay, so what are some indicators that you're not living in the present? There's a few things. Focusing solely on what is missing, right? What does that mean? If, let's say, you're out at a dinner, and actually, I'm going to tell a story. So, when I was young, I had a birthday party, and I was so excited to like have this sleepover with all the girls, and they were going to come and show up, and we were going to have tea and like tea party and dress up and all the things that a little girl would love at her birthday party. And I invited 10 people to come to my party, and I just knew all 10 were going to show up. And I was extremely disappointed because only 4 out of the 10 that I had invited showed up. And I sat there in such a mood the entire time that I didn't actually give the attention that the 4 friends that showed up actually deserved, right? I ended up really not even making their time worth it. Like they took the time out to come and celebrate me, but I was so focused on the 6 that did not show up that I couldn't even appreciate what was right in front of me. Okay. And so one of those where I say focusing solely on what is missing, sometimes we can have all the things that we want, or we can have 9 out of the 10 things that we want in a day. But when we focus on the one thing that is missing, we completely disregard those 9 things, and then we lose our ability to even appreciate what is happening, right? The next thing is constantly living for tomorrow. If you find yourself always in a state of preparation, always in a state of getting ready, are you ever really focusing on the things that are in front of you? And I want to go back to the title, right? What are you getting ready for? What are you getting ready for? Now, many of us on this call are really striving to be leaders and to be change agents, right? Especially for women, our communities, people of color. We are striving to make differences. How is it that we are going to make a difference in tomorrow if we can't even make any changes for today? Another indicator that you're not living in the present is comparing yourself to others. Have you ever found yourself scrolling through social media or looking at peers that might be seemingly ahead of you in their lives than you are in your own, and wondering when you're going to get to that next stage, and really just looking outside at everyone else instead of looking within? That comparison can really hinder your ability to grow. Now, let's not confuse comparing with motivation. When you are looking to others for motivation and inspiration, I think that that is beautiful, and I think that that is powerful. But when it comes to a point where every act that you do, every move you make is in spite of or in comparison of someone else in your peer group, then you lose the part of living for yourself and living for this present moment. That is extremely crucial. The last thing is focusing on the negative. Do you find yourself going through an entire day, and by the end of the day, your friends or your partner asks, well, how was your day today? And out of all of the events that occurred, the only thing you can manage to share are all of the negative things that happened in your day. Let me give you an example. One day, I went to work, I had a nice breakfast, had some coffee, I had a great conversation with a coworker, I accomplished 9 out of the 10 tasks on my list, and I got home at around 7 p.m. Now, if someone were to ask me how my day was, and I wanted to speak positively about my day, that is probably how I would express it. But what if someone asked me how my day was, and I say, well, I got to work, I had a meeting, I accomplished 9 out of the 10 things. So there was one thing that I didn't accomplish, and I got home extremely late. So instead of focusing on the positive parts of the day, I'm focusing on those negative parts. And that is something that it's really a mindset shift, because all days, I like to say that there isn't a good or a bad, there just is. Okay. And so when we go through the day and focus on what is versus looking at things or painting a picture of what's good and what's bad, we're able to move through the world and look fully at the present without labeling anything as good or bad, because all of the things that happen to us really are happening for us, and they're happening for our growth, right? And so there are moments that might be unpleasant, but when you only focus on the unpleasantness, rather it being a learning opportunity, then we again pull ourselves in a state of lack. Next slide. So how can we be more present? First thing is mindfulness. Mindfulness is extremely important because it allows us to really focus on our whole selves. And mindfulness includes our mind, body, soul, our spirit. And all of those things are extremely important, because if we are not able to focus on ourselves, we're not able to pour into others as we lead. Ever heard of this saying? You can't pour out of an empty cup. Well, if your cup is empty, you have nothing to pour into others. And so mindfulness helps us to pour into ourselves and realize what is happening in the present moment. The next thing is self-compassion. Self-compassion, especially as leaders, is important because we don't want to get to a stage where we're always focusing on what we did not accomplish. And if we set out to accomplish certain things and that did not happen, having the compassion and the grace for ourselves is going to help us in practice to have compassion for others. The next is gratitude. Being grateful for the moments, being grateful for the accomplishments, being grateful for the pleasant and unpleasant things will help us to build that esteem and it'll build that stamina to really be able to take into all of our projects. So by the end of each day, one of the things I think is extremely important to do is find 3 things that you are grateful for, 3 wins at the end of your day. Well, what does that mean? Well, it could be, a win could be, I made coffee this morning. A win could be, I did the dishes. A win could be, I finished an article or a social media post that I think was really impactful. A win could be as big or as small as you allow it, but when we practice that gratitude and when we acknowledge it, we have a good foundation to continue to build on. Intentionality and taking a pause. So being intentional about everything that we do in a day, and also intentionally taking a step back and pausing. As leaders, we are ready to hit the ground and run and run and run and run. And one thing that Tasha was saying in the last speaking engagement is that, there was a woman who committed suicide, and she seemed to be a leader or was a leader. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, she decided that she could not do life anymore. Right. And I think that one of the scariest things about life is not taking a break to assess yourself and where you are, and not taking a moment to look in the mirror, to take a pause, to take a breath, so that you can give yourself the stamina, the energy, the inspiration that you need to continue to keep going. Taking a pause is where the strength comes in. Next slide, please. Okay, so what does mindfulness mean? Mindfulness is giving your full attention to the present moment, and it means being aware of what is going on with your feelings, thoughts, and senses. It's really important to know exactly how to be mindful and exactly to understand everything that is going on with yourself. Next slide. Self-compassion. As I mentioned before, being kind to yourself. It means being understanding and supportive, even when things don't go your way or as they planned. Next slide. Why is self-compassion important? It helps us to deal with challenges and disappointments, improves self-esteem and self-worth, and encourages confidence and resiliency. Next slide. As I said before, we want to continue to focus on the positives. So at the end of your day or the start of your morning, instead of saying, I am terrible at this, or I can't get this right, or focusing on the negatives, focusing on the things that are going right in your life and going well. Next slide. So, positive self-talk, we can turn that negative talk into positive talk by considering how we would speak to a friend who is experiencing the same problem. So if a friend was having a hard time and came up to you, what encouraging words would you say to them? Next slide. It's okay to have strong feelings. We all experience discouragement and anger and sadness when things don't work the way we want to. But let's say things like this: I did my best. Learning something new can be hard, but I can keep practicing. Next slide. As I stated before, kindness and gratitude is extremely important. And kindness goes with compassion for yourself and for others. Next slide. So let's practice daily acts of kindness, because that will help to foster that self-compassion and compassion for others. Giving a compliment, encouraging someone or helping someone, being nice to a friend, listening without interrupting, and being friendly, generous, and considerate. Next slide. Here are a few mindfulness techniques. Ask yourself some of these questions. What am I feeling in this moment? Why am I feeling this way? What can I do next to help myself? Next slide. I'm going to end with this. If you focus on what you lack, you lose what you have. If you focus on what you have, you gain what you lack. That is by Benjamin Hardy, and I wish you all well. Let's focus on the present while we're preparing for the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shyanne. That was really an incredible presentation. I think a lot of people, look, this is not child's play. This is not, this is not anything that we should play with. If you want to avoid burnout, you really have to do a deep intake of yourself. And I really want to appreciate you, Shyanne, for coming on. So we're going to actually move things on. keep the ball rolling and bring on our next and our final speaker for today.